tragic accident changed the course of his life forever. For most, it would have begun a life of discontent and wallowing around in self-misery. For Jonathan Nadeau, it kickstarted a new chapter of inspiration and appreciation. Even though he lost his sight permanently, he gained a passion to put creativity first in all areas of his life. And now, he wants to encourage you to do the same. There are times when you'll be faced with a choice. Be crushed by the weight of the situation, or use the fresh start to rebound bigger, better, and more inspired than ever before. This is Tornado, stories of those who refuse to choose defeat and instead chose to embrace the storm. Here's your host, Jonathan Nadeau.
Greetings and salutations. Thank you for joining us. My name's Jonathan Nadeau, and this is Embrace Your Storm. We've got another exciting episode for you. Today we're speaking with Sean. He's submitted a film to the Tornado Film Festival called Cover Your Ears. So Sean, thanks for coming on today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It is great to have you on. And before we get into Cover Your Ears, how did you end up getting into film as your creative outlet for your, for what you use as your creativity?
Well, I had a class in high school that we kind of fooled around with video cameras. It was called TV Arts, and I just really gravitated towards it and kind of did well in that class.
That's cool.
And then when I was kind of out of high school and wondering what I was going to do, I moved out to Vancouver and went to film school and ended up dropping out of film school and taking my tuition refund and buying a camera and a bunch of books, and kind of fell backwards into making my first film.
No kidding. That is interesting. So before we get into Cover Yours, which is an interesting topic all on its own, what made you because here's the thing, obviously from what you just said, you are like, film is definitely like your creative outlet where it's like that's the drive in you, right? Because you were like, I'm gonna go to school to learn how to do this thing. You're like, you know what, this isn't really working, give me back my money and I'll figure out how to teach myself, because I'm not getting it the way I think I need it. Like that's really interesting that you went really that way about it. That's really cool.
Yeah, exactly. I'm happy it worked out that way. I mean, it could have went the other way, but
I hear you.
Yeah, it seemed to. I ended up making my first film kind of very naive as to how difficult it would be, and by the time I was halfway through it, I was like, "Well, I guess I'm finishing this," and it seemed to do well, and then that just springboarded into the next one.
So, what was your first film about? Like, did you write it? Did you like how much of did you kind of do everything? How much help did you have? Like, what was it about? Like, kind of tell us a little bit about that.
It was also a documentary. It was on the covering the life and career of a famous Canadian punk singer named Chai Pig from the band SNFU. And I was just a big fan growing up. I was like excited to just kind of hang out with him. I thought it was cool. And his story was incredibly interesting, and he really let us into his life for over a year as we made it, and it seemed to do really well.
I have to admit I'm a complete ignoramus. I feel like I know quite a bit about music. I've never heard of that band ever.
Oh, in Canada, they're the royalty up here.
Yeah, I believe so. Like, what was like what was his name again?
Mr. Chai Pig was his stage name, but Ken Chin was his real name.
So what was like his what made him royalty? What was it like made his band royalty?
Well, they were one of the first kind of wave of Canadian punk bands. 1981 was when they started.
Oh, okay, it's from that time. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, so they really paved the way for a bunch of other artists.
I get that.
And his story was really interesting. He struggled with mental health issues and addiction, and he was kind of like borderline homeless when we started the documentary, and through the course of the film he got the band back together and went on, European, South American tours and across
Hmm.
Canada, kind of revived the band. So we got lucky at coming in at the right time.
That's pretty cool, dude.
Yeah, thank
That's
you.
really cool.
It was a great project, and especially being a big fan of the band, like in my teen years, it was just like cool to do.
I hear you. So then what made you want to do Cover Your Ears then? To like tell us what that's about. What made you want to do it?
Well, Cover Your Ears is a documentary on the cause and effect of music censorship over the last 100 years. And being just a big music geek, I always kind of found those acts that are on the fringes really interesting and controversial acts. Even if I wasn't kind of into the music, I was always interested in the story.
Mm.
And we just my co-producer Kayvon Saremi and I, who kind of developed the project, we just found that well over 100 years, even there's just so many instances throughout, and it always kind of reflected society and culture in a way that was not related to music. And
Interesting.
we just felt like that was a really interesting story and kind of
That's
started
cool.
unpacking it.
So what kind of like censorship did you find like, kind of before like the like say the 20s and whatever the 1900s, like what kind of censorship were you finding then?
Well, we start the documentary kind of at the birth of recorded music.
Okay.
So, I mean, we have an early instance of Mozart, who, surprisingly enough, wrote lyrics a lot about farting and shitting and that sort of thing, which I was like shocked to find out. So, and there was all these kind of like, pub tunes and little limericks and things that existed before recorded music, but we kind of dive in around jazz and the fear of jazz, and blues.
Okay, that's interesting. That's cool. I was actually just having a conversation the other day about I looked into like in the 1950s kind of like what were the top like 10 the top 100 songs and from the 50s, and the majority of them were major bass songs, but now if you look at they're minor bass songs, the majority of the top 100 songs. That's like
Yeah,
that's kind of interesting how that's happened.
yeah. The '50s were a really interesting time too because kind of it was the birth of rock and roll, and it coincided with the birth of television. So
Mm.
it kind of melded together these two mediums in a new way that nobody had seen before.
Yeah, no, totally. And, so what else do you kind of go through? Like how long is this is Cover Your Ears? Like how long is it? And like what kind of other um sort of what are some other the major topics that you cover within it?
Well, it's a feature-length doc. It's 103 minutes.
Mm.
We cover a lot.
Do
We
you
go
cover
from
Frank Zappa at all?
Yeah, we cover Zappa and Twisted Sister and the PMRC Senate hearings in the
Mm.
80s. But I mean, everything from the fear of jazz to kind of dirty blues into birth of rock and roll, into the
Mm.
hippie movement,
Mm.
into the birth of punk and glam, uh, hip hop, early hip hop,
Interesting.
gangster rap,
Wow.
um, Marilyn Manson, the Dixie Chicks.
Mm.
We try to cover it all.
Yeah, wow. Man, that is so cool. So like do you have you done other documentaries? Have you done all sort of like I don't want to say like music based, but like kind of like music leaning or focus other work?
This is my only other music doc. I did a kind of live music web series for a bit, but I did the film before this was called "Fuck You All," the Uwe Boll story about notorious German director Uwe Boll. I did one on silent film pioneer Max Sennett. So, kind of always around the entertainment industry, but
I hear you. Okay.
hopefully on the fringes. I try to like kind of
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
find those under the radar stories.
I hear what you're saying. That's cool. That's really cool. So are you working on anything currently? Do you have any plans after? Um,
Yeah, I've got a couple projects in development, but I can't really talk about them
Oh,
too
okay,
much at
okay,
this
okay.
point. But yeah, always working on the next one.
I hear you. I hear what you're saying. Well, another question I like to ask you is, what advice would you give to people listening in the audience that are like first getting into the kind of film industry? Like, if they're getting into writing or producing or directing, like, what kind of advice would you give them?
I would say just go for it and get out there and make mistakes and make bad
Mm,
films, because you're never going to make a good film till you make numerous bad films. Um, yeah, and don't wait for any sort of grant or any permission to do it. Just go do it.
I totally agree with you on that one for sure. And like, especially with what you're saying, like you just kind of keep making things, and like even if it's bad, or what you think is bad or whatever it is, you kind of keep working through those, because you have to get through those to get to the good stuff.
Yeah, and you might make a film that is cringeworthy to you, but it might resonate with somebody else,
Absolutely.
and it
Absolutely.
it might inspire somebody else to, even if they see it and go, "Well, I could do that." Then
Yeah.
that's good too, because it inspires other people's art.
Absolutely, man. I agree with that 100%. So, again, Sean, thank you so much for your time and your submission to the Tornado Film Festival. And everyone, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And don't forget to embrace your storm. See ya.
Tornado with Jonathan Nadeau. If you haven't yet, please subscribe now so you're first to hear new episodes with more stories of inspiration about the highs and lows of life, and how embracing the storm is so much more fulfilling of a life than being crushed by the weight of the world. And until then, we hope you're inspired to do something, whether it's creating, participating, or learning, whatever leads you to your personal passion.